Good evening, everybody. We got a couple of people up here tonight that you haven't seen this week. On the far end is Jason Luker, our youth pastor from Maryville Hill Chapel. And then, of course, you know Danny. Most of you know Randall Prim. He was with us last night. And then you know Wanda Brown. You see her probably on a regular basis. Anyway, would y'all stand with us as we sing, "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus."
'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take Him at His word, just to rest upon His promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I proved Him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust His cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge me 'neath the healing, cleansing flood. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I proved Him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more. I'm so glad I learned to trust Thee, precious Jesus, Savior, friend, and I know that Thou art with me, will be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust Him, how I proved Him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust Him more.
Thank you. You may be seated for a moment. And, okay, that'll work. Give me a microphone, or I can make it without it. We are glad you were here tonight. Appreciate everybody, and we're glad to have Scott back with us to preach. And Pure Heart kind of changes every night. This is kind of a flexible Pure Heart, you know. With a real pure heart, please stand up. But they have been great, and we appreciate Danny and Beth. And Randall is back tonight. And then with them, Jason, you heard him introduced. Jason Luker is the youth pastor at Maryville Hill Chapel. And with him, over here seated to your right, my left, is his wife and daughter and son, wife Stephanie and daughter Hunter and son Caden. So we are glad you're here. We know there are others from Maryville Hill Chapel as well, including their pastor tonight, Ben Wasson. Ben, raise your hand there. And you know, if all fails, you know, if he doesn't make it through, we want to call you on up and help us get through. But we appreciate all who've come tonight. Welcome to Three Creeks Baptist Church. Just a personal note for the Three Creeks bunch, just to let you know that Larry Cook's mother, Kathleen Kelly, did have her surgery today. We've been wondering about her, and she's doing well. She was able to keep her leg. There was possible thought of a prosthesis that was not necessary, but she had her surgery in Little Rock, and so we're glad to hear that she came through that okay. Let me lead us in prayer, and then we'll move on in our revival tonight. Father, in all that is done, I pray that there will be love. And I pray that love will come from you. Shower down, Father, your love upon us, that we may be willing and able and open to love each other, and even maybe love ourselves if that is needed, the way you love us, Lord. Not any kind of love that would be sinful, but maybe because of your work in us tonight, we can experience your grace. We can know that the past is the past and the future is wonderful in your hands. We pray, Father, for all churches represented tonight, but we do pray especially, Father, rightfully so, for Three Creeks Baptist Church, that because we are gathering and because we have prayed so much and because our hearts are open to your word, that you would help us, Lord, to hear what we need to hear to be as healthy as you want us to be, and as outreaching as you call us to be, and as ready for the future as we truly want to be. We pray for these things now, Father. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Will you stand with us as we sing again? We're going to try to teach you a new song. I know some of you are not going to be familiar with this. Our church learned it a couple of years ago, and we did it Easter Sunday. If you don't know it very well, it's okay. If you don't want to sing, if you want to just watch the words are awesome. It's telling the whole story.
You were always fighting for us, heaven's angels all around. My delight is found in knowing that you wear the victor's crown. You're my help and my defender, you're my savior and my friend. By your grace I live and breathe to worship you. At the mention of your greatness, in your name I will bow down. In your presence fear is silent, for you wear the victor's crown. Let your glory fill this temple, let your power overflow. By your grace I live and breathe to worship you.
Hallelujah. You have overcome. You have overcome. Hallelujah. Jesus, you have overcome the world. You are ever interceding as the lost become the found. You can never be defeated, for you wear the victor's crown. You are Jesus the Messiah, you're the hope of all the world. By your grace I live and breathe to worship you. Hallelujah. You have overcome. You have overcome. Hallelujah. Jesus, you have overcome the world. Every high thing must come down. Every stronghold shall be broken. You wear the victor's crown. You overcome. You overcome. Every high thing must come down. Every stronghold shall be broken. You wear the victor's crown. You overcome. You overcome. At the cross the work was finished. You were buried in the ground, but the grave could not contain you, for you wear the victor's crown. Sing it with us. Hallelujah. You have overcome. You have overcome. Hallelujah. Jesus, you have overcome the world. Hallelujah. Jesus, you have overcome the world. Amen.
And now you can say you know that song. Because quite a few people have told me this week they wanted us to do that song. So we did. Now you know it. Now y'all can do it. Okay.
How many of y'all had some blessings happen this week? I hope so. I mean, man, this has been a great week already, and I've been changed myself. So count your blessings. You need to do that. When? Every day. So sing this song with us. Count your blessings. When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, when you are discouraged thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. When you look at others with their lands and gold, think that Christ has promised you his wealth untold. Count your many blessings, money cannot buy. Your reward in heaven, not your home on high. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged, God is over all. Count your many blessings, angels will attend. Help and comfort give you till your journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. Man, did I hear an amen out there?
Amen.
Amen, yeah. You can do that in this church. I think you can clap too. Is that right? Do y'all clap? All right, we can do, you know, you're not giving us praise, you're giving God praise, okay? All right, come thou fount, come thou king. Just listen to the words and sing along with them. Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mountain fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. I was lost in utter darkness till you came and rescued me. I was bound by all my sin when your love came and set me free. Now my soul can sing a new song. Now my heart has found a home. Now your grace is always with me, and I'll never be alone. Come thou fount, come thou King, come thou precious Prince of Peace. Hear your bride, to you we sing. Come thou fount of our blessing, come thou fount. daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness like a fetter bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. Come thou fount, come thou King, come thou precious Prince of Peace. Hear your bride, to you we sing. Come thou fount of our blessing. Come thou fount, come thou King, come thou precious Prince of Peace. Hear your bride, to you we sing. Come thou fount of our blessing. I was lost in utter darkness till you came and rescued me. I was bound by all my sin when your love came and set me free. Now my soul can sing a new song. Now my heart has found a home. Now your grace is always with me, and I'll never be alone.
Amen. You can be seated.
Like a babe when it cries for its mother, like a child I was helpless and alone. Then I met the Master. Now I am one of his own. For all things were changed when he found me. A new day broke through all around me. For I met the Master. Now I belong to him. Like a blind man who walks in the darkness, I had longed, I had searched for the light. Then I met the Master, and now I walk no more in the night. For all things, help me, when he found me. A new day broke through all around me. For I met the Master. Now I belong to him. I met the Master. Now I belong to him.
I've been able to hear Danny and Beth and Randall and all those guys for a long time, and you can tell that they've been singing for a while. You know, I mean, it's just smooth, and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. We've been going through a lot of material, and I wanted to take a moment tonight before we began, and I wanted to just go over some of the stuff that we've learned so that you'll see. So if you haven't been here, you'll know what we've covered, because we've covered a lot of ground. And so tonight I want to take off and just show you a few things that we have discussed. As I was studying today for this, I was reminded that people don't always remember your points, but they will often remember a story. And so somebody asked me, you know, why I tell so many stories, and I said, I don't think I tell enough, honestly, because when Jesus spoke, if you read the Gospels, he was always telling a parable, and he was the best teacher ever. And so if the best teacher ever told stories, oftentimes, then I think there's some good advice there for everyone else, for me included. And I'll tell you this as well. Those stories that I tell you come from a lot of mistakes and hard times. And so one of the things that I want to drive home to you in the time we have remaining is that you have got to get out there and experience some life in order to have stories to tell. You've got to have some endeavors for the Lord in order to be able to share what the Lord's done. So if you never make any endeavors for Christ, you're not going to have any stories to share. So the first thing I want to go over is I want to recap, and I'm going to go through these very quickly. We learned from Romans 12:1 and 2 that we are called to live lives of sacrifice. Secondly, our lives are to be lives of nonconformity. And therefore, the Christian life is often uncomfortable, inconvenient, awkward, because it is sacrificial. And we talked about how you're going to be put in uncomfortable situations. You're going to be have difficult conversations. When you share Christ, it can be difficult sometimes. It's often going to be with people that rub you the wrong way. It could be with total strangers. It may be with a family member. And sometimes family members are the toughest people to witness to. I think that Jesus had a difficult time with his family members. They didn't believe in him for a long time, and I think they thought he was crazy. And they were worried about him. And they were trying to call him out at different times. And he said, your mother and brothers are outside. He said, my mother and brothers are here. And I'm sure that didn't help his case any at that point in time. But Jesus was not accepted by his own family. And sometimes you guys have family members and you may share Jesus with them, or you may have someone at school and you share Jesus with them at school and they don't accept it. Maybe a best friend. I put down that hanging out with sinners, loving and befriending them is a sign of characteristics of sacrificial Christian life. So if you don't hang out with sinners, you cannot be living a sacrificial Christian life. You have got to have some friends that you are witnessing to. Remember that Jesus was told that he tried to be reprimanded by the Pharisees, and they were always saying, why does Jesus hang out with all the sinners? And he was in the sinners' homes, and he was just like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. So if Jesus railed against the Pharisees, you have to consider, would he rail against me? You can't continue to profess Christ and not do the things that Jesus did. There has got to be some witnessing going on. And if you do that, if you step out in faith and witness and start living the Christian life, then you'll get this fulfillment that Jesus talks about. We also talked about loving people and demonstrating that love towards people who do not love you as being another characteristic of the sacrificial life. Loving people and demonstrating that love towards people who do not love you is another characteristic. Persecution and suffering are additional signs, additional characteristics of following Jesus and experiencing the blessed, abundant life. You're going to suffer. We talked about that quite a bit, that suffering is part of the Christian experience. It's part of the human experience, but the suffering we're talking about is that when you live for Christ, there will be persecution and there'll be suffering. But also, just the human experience brings about a lot of suffering. Many of you you suffer with ailments, and you suffer with just difficulties of life. You've lost a loved one close to you, and you may struggle with loneliness, and you may struggle with depression. You may have old fears. You may have things that were done to you in your past that continue to haunt you. You've got to understand that in this life, you're going to have difficulties. And I can't tell you why those things happen, but I can tell you that the intent for God is that you'd be made more into the image of Christ. So we understand that God allows suffering so that we'll be made more into the image of Jesus. That's the intent. All the whys and that stuff, I can't. I remember a man at Maryville Chapel died, Ken Ball, from McKinnon and Ball. And he was young. He stepped off the back of a roof on his way to go do sound at the church. And he was in a hurry. He stepped off a building, I think smack over high school out there. And he stepped off and it killed him. Died instantly. 2 little girls, Rachel and Rebecca. And I remember one of the students in our youth ministry saying, why did this happen? And I said, I don't know. It's hard to look at somebody and say, I don't know why somebody died. But we won't know this side of heaven. We won't understand the timing of it. We don't know it. It doesn't ever seem like a great time to go, especially when folks are young. You sit around and ask why, you'll lose your mind. I mean, you will. We don't have enough information. We can't see the big picture. And that's where faith comes in. But I want you to understand that you've got to get this, that when those things happen, you will either push God away or you'll draw close. And the intent is that you will draw close. If you embrace that, then you'll begin to thank God for your suffering. You'll see that suffering as a blessing. You read in Paul's writings, he was always thanking God. He was praising God that he got to suffer for the name, that he was counted worthy of suffering for the name. And you think when you read that, you're like, he just seems to like pain. But he didn't like pain. He liked being conformed into the image of Jesus. So when a loved one goes, and it's very difficult when you watch them go, understand that you won't understand everything this side of heaven. But also understand that this is an opportunity to draw close to God. We also talked about suffering is the plowing of the heart garden from which the seeds of the fruit of the Spirit will grow. Suffering is the plowing of the heart garden from which the seeds of the fruit of the Spirit will grow. So, if you remember, we read this where that through suffering, we are made into the character of God. Through suffering, that is the means by which God creates his character in us. Suffering. Now, if I was able to talk to God just face to face, just sitting right here, I would say, why did you choose suffering? Why not hunting or bowling or conversations or Bible reading or listening to a sermon? Why did you choose suffering as the means? I don't know why, but here's what I do know. I know that it's part of the human experience. I know that God set it up. I understand that we can either embrace the suffering or we can get angry at God. But remember, if you start getting angry at God, he's not the one that ate the fruit. Okay? We ate the fruit. He gave us one job. Okay? Don't eat that fruit from that tree. I mean, you can have everything else, just that one tree. Don't eat that one tree. And we ate the one tree. And then came in what I call all of the D's. Disease, death, decay. I mean, all those things came in. And we are the ones that are responsible. So God didn't say, I'm going to save you from a decaying, diseased world. I'm just going to walk with you through it. We did it. God's here with us through it. God will spare you no sorrow to bring you closer to him. I don't like that, but that's the truth. Think about that. God will spare me and you no sorrow. No amount of sadness that he's not willing to put you through, difficulty he's not willing to put you through in order to form the image of Christ in you. That is paramount to him, that we would reflect his glory. So you have to stop and consider, am I reflecting God's glory? If you're not living a sacrificial life, tell me how that's possible. God will not accept our worship if we are not bringing our best or not living sacrificially for him. We talked about that last night. God will not accept our worship if we are not bringing our best or not living sacrificially for him. We talked about that in Malachi in chapter 1 last night. And then verse 2 and 3 was a difficult verse. You can look that up. You didn't see it. It's tough to read what God says about our worship if it's not our best. What he says in Malachi, he says, I deserve your best. You will honor me. So, we understand that when we come here, or in any church, when we come in here, we had better bring our best. Because God deserves it. God deserves it. I see some people looking up Malachi 2:3. I mean, it's mean, I'm telling you. People here last night, it's mean. But listen to me. Listen to me. Understand that before church, before your day starts, the way you do it is you hit your knees when you get out of bed, or you just lie in bed and you pray, but you give your life and your day to the Lord. Every day I get up, I try to remember. Some days I don't. Some days I don't, but I try. When I stand up, I try to get on my knees right then, early in the morning before the sun rises, and I try to sit there and pray. Sometimes I forget, and I'll be reminded. I may even be all the way to work, and I'll get down on my knees in my office and pray and give my life and my day to him. I know that I'm already his. But every day it says to pick up your cross daily and follow him. So every day I start back on the journey of dying to myself. Right? Y'all hitting what I'm pitching? Okay? All right. So God will not accept our worship. My wife said the other day, she's giving me pointers. And I asked for it. And she's like, you repeat yourself too much. I love her. And I'm like, she goes, you trying to make a point? I said, yeah, I'm trying to understand. If you say it, 21 times, they'll never forget it. So I think that is true. Not living sacrificially means we are seeking our own comfort, satisfying our own selfish nature with self-indulgence and comfort. Not living sacrificially means we are seeking our own comfort. So, if you're not putting yourself in uncomfortable situations by sharing your faith, if you are not going to places that are uncomfortable for you to share your faith, then you are satisfying your own selfish nature. You're feeding the old man, as the Bible says. You guys have heard this, and I repeat it all the time to the guys up at Renewal Ranch, okay? There's an old man and a new man. Some of the guys at Renewal Ranch that come in there, some of the guys know the Bible really well, like really well. And then some of the guys have never heard John 3:16. So when I'm teaching up there, I'm very aware that I've got a mixed audience, but they all say we're struggling. They all say that. So that's what they have in common, that they understand they're in need of help. And that's a good thing. Everybody's on the same page. But I tell them, and I read to them, the old man and the new man, and I say, the little boy raised his hand in Sunday school class and said, if there's an old man and a new man fighting inside of me, which one's going to win? And the old pastor said, whichever one you feed the most. You feed your sin nature, you're going to sin. You got to starve him out. You got to starve out the old man, and you got to feed the new man. You understand? You feed the new man with God's word, with prayer, with worship, with praise, with sacrificial living. So this leads to worship out of obligation, not honor, which leads to weariness or drudgery. So when we feed the old man, this leads to worship out of obligation. And we talked about this last night. Remember I said, when did we start putting church before worship? When did we get to a place to where we come to church out of obligation and not honor? And I said, you have to check yourself all the time to see, am I going to church because it's tradition? Or am I going to church because I get to go worship my Father with my brothers and sisters in Christ? And I admitted to you that I've gone to church many times before because it was tradition and it was obligation, almost begrudgingly. Anytime that tradition gets in front of honoring God, you're in sin. Because what you're doing is considered drudgery. And we talked about that weariness or drudgery. And God says, I will not accept it. So that means you come to church and God's not blessing it. Authentic prayer and worship comes from sacrificial living, humility, thankfulness. God calls us to believe his vastness. Now hold on just a second. We just went through all this other. Tonight we're going to talk about getting a vision from the Lord. Okay? And I want to tell you right now, if you have your Bibles, flip over to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12. We're going to look at verses 1 through 4. Genesis 12, 1 through 4 says, Now the Lord said to Abram, Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Verse 4, so Abram went as the Lord had said to him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed for Haran. Wow. Then flip over to 15, 5 and 6. Just two verses, 15, 5 and 6. And God brought him outside and said, look towards heaven and number the stars, if you're able to number them. Then he said, so shall your offspring be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. See, people in the Old Testament were saved the same way that people in the New Testament are. They believed in the Old Testament in the promise of God. It says Abram believed God, and it was credited to his account as righteousness. He was counted righteous long before Jesus was born in the flesh, because he believed in the promise of God. Now, he didn't know that promise was to be Jesus the Christ, but he understood and he believed in the promise of God, not knowing all that we know. And the New Testament talks about that. Paul talks about that, how they didn't know what we know. Now we see, now we understand, but even still they believed. So Abram believed God, and it was credited to his account as righteousness. Now, you think about sometimes about dreams and visions, and sometimes it makes us, uncomfortable, but there's nothing to be uncomfortable about whatsoever. In Joel, it says in the last days, your old men will dream dreams and your young men will see visions. That's from God's word. So there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to always check that against God's word. But God calls each of us to believe in his vastness, his power, his promises, his blessing. He calls us all to believe in his power, his promises, his blessing. That's what he did in Genesis. Abram walks outside and he says, hey, Abram, look up at the sky. And he looks up. He says, if you can count those stars, so you'll be able to number your children. Now that's just crazy. At 75, your wife's barren. I mean, just think about that. Think about how great Abram to become Abraham. Think about his faith and the magnitude. But I think one of the things that, I think the reason that God chose Abraham was because he had this sense of adventure. Even at 75 years old, he's like, I just want to do something that's going to last the test of time, of eternity. I think he had this desire in his heart, and God saw that. He wanted this adventure. He wanted this. And so God, he feeds that, and he'll feed that for us as well. I went to Silver Dollar City not long ago, and I was telling some people last night at dinner, and they've got, at Silver Dollar City now, they've got some big-time roller coasters. It's not like the mom and pop shop up there. It is on the map. I mean, the kind of stuff that makes people hurl. It is big time, big time. I'm serious. I'm not joking. It is mean roller coasters, all right? Like, you don't get on them if you've got any kind of a heart condition. I mean, and you don't get on them if you don't want to have a heart condition. It is mean. And I got a 16-year-old daughter, and I'm like, I've been around the youth, and we've gone to Six Flags, and we've gone to all these places. I've been to Disney World, and, I don't care for roller coasters. I mean, I don't. And we got on a couple of those things up there at Silver Dollar City, and it's just, the problem is, the reason I don't enjoy them is because I grab on like I'm riding a bull. You know what I'm saying? I grab on like I'm riding a bull, and I grab it, and they took a picture of me with the youth up there at Six Flags, and the oldest one they've got, which is the Texas, what is it? It's the wooden one. Texas Giant. That's what it is. And they need to retire that thing because those wooden ones aren't as smooth as the other ones. And it'll jerk you around. And they take your picture going down. And they took my picture, and I've still got it somewhere. I don't know where I put that picture. But they take your picture going down, and there was a student sitting next to me. And here's my photo. I've got my arms up underneath that padded thing, and I'm just like this. Zero enjoyment out of that. I mean, I held on and that thing would move and I'd move with it. And I got off that thing. I just did like this. And they're like, let's go again, let's go again. They did this thing up there called the dungeon drop. They take you up there and then they just drop you. I hate that thing. Went up in that thing with our kids and they're all giggling and stuff. You know, it just sits there and you're looking over Houston. And you're just sitting there, Dallas, wherever, I don't know. You're sitting there looking out over the city. But don't let them, what they try to do, what they're doing with you is they're trying to kind of lull you to sleep where you'll sit there and get relaxed a little bit and look at the city. Don't do it. Don't do it. Sit there and you know at any moment that thing's going to fall. And it falls like 5 stories. Just falls. And so you hear this little, and you're like, huh, and it didn't fall. You sit there and whoo, then it just goes. And you fall straight down and it stops you. And everybody is like, oh, let's go again. I'm like, never again. Why would I want to do that ever again? I love that young people have this sense of adventure. They want to experience all that life's got to offer. And somewhere along the line, as we get older, we lose that sense of adventure. Your most in-depth Christians, the ones that have the most to offer as they get older, are the ones that haven't left and forgotten their sense of adventure. Now, I talked about Joe Cheshire last night. I've talked about him 3 times. Y'all can tell him. But I love Joe T. I love his personality. It's hard not to like Joe Cheshire. But one thing, I told you that he drove this van when he's retired. I mean, this wasn't that long ago. This was 9 years ago, 8 years, 10 years ago. He was driving a bus from Marable Hill to Junction and picking up a bus full of unruly kids. I'm not saying they're all unruly, but most of them were. And he would drive and go down there and get them. He would get down there, he'd be down there to pick them up at 6 o'clock, okay? And he would get back to Marable Hill Chapel at about 9:30 at night. Okay? And I mean, that's tough. You know what I'm saying? But he's always wearing a Jesus loves you sticker, and he just said, I'm doing this for the Lord. And so it was great. It was great that he did that. And I love that about Joe T. And I love that about other Christians as they get older, that they say, I'm not done. I'm not done. Sign me up. And I understand there's certain things you can't do as you get older, but I'm telling you, even if you're in a wheelchair and being pushed around, you can be going down the hospital rooms and you can be praying with people. I'm telling you, you're never retired. You're never retired from ministry. And you don't want to die and God say you start off good and you did good for 90% of your life, but the last 10%, you just dud it out. I don't want that. I want him to say to me, Scott, you pushed as hard as you could when you started walking with me and you never quit. God calls us to dream big dreams about blessing others. So look at verse 3 again. I just want to go back and show this to you, 12:3. This is important that you see this. This is a nugget to find in here, okay? 12:3 says this. So I just want to highlight this to you again. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you, listen to this, in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. They shall be blessed. So God calls us to dream big dreams about blessing others. So what he says to Abraham is he said, if you'll do this, if you'll step out in faith, you'll be a blessing to others. God's always calling us to step out in faith so that we'll be a blessing to others. And so I just need to ask you, are you currently living in such a way that you are a blessing to others? one of the things that I've always done with youth and with these guys up there at Renewal Ranch, there's a little family graveyard up there. And it's old, and you go back into it, and everybody lived. They were born back around the Civil War. So you go out there, and I've taken youth out many times before, just to a graveyard. It's one of the best places to do a devotional ever. You go out to a graveyard and say, go find me the oldest date you can find, and then find me the newest date you can find. And they'll go out and look, and I want you to come back, and I want you to find me something on somebody's gravestone that says something interesting. And they go back and they look at it and stuff, and they get around and they talk about it. And I just say, look, to the guys out at Renewal Ranch, I'm like, look at this, okay? You even walk out in the woods and you'll find some old tombstones there. I mean, just old, up on a hill, and there'll be trees this big around right beside it. You know they didn't bury them beside that, so that tombstone's been there for a couple hundred years. It's crazy, and you see it out there. It didn't creep me out or anything. I look at it, and I'm trying to see the year on it and everything. And I tell them, I say, look, somebody lived and died here. There were people that stood right here. And I said, look at these dates on this. And they'll look, and I'll say, how old was this person? They'll say, 10 years old. I said, so a mama and a daddy stood right here, and there was a funeral here under these big oaks right here. And they lived life here. And then you can see where mom and dad are buried over there. And you can see different last names, but probably they were from a church or from that little area out there by these lakes, just off the Arkansas River. And I look at them and I say, I wonder how they lived. Did they impact the world for the kingdom? And I wonder if people will say that I've impacted the world for the kingdom. I want that. I went to a funeral recently, and there was nothing said about the Lord about this grandmother that passed away. The first funeral I ever did, a friend of mine asked me to do his grandmother's funeral because she didn't have her home church. She said she did, but she didn't. And I went and sat with the family, and I did what I was told to do by some wise pastors. And I asked them to tell me all the good things and the history, and I did all that stuff, and I wrote it down. But I'm telling you, I was very uneasy because I did not have a firm testimony. And I'm going to tell you something. Going to church back in the 70s isn't it. And being a member on a roll at some church is not it. And I had to work, and I presented the gospel. I always do when I'm at a funeral. I present the gospel. But you know what? It is sad when people's got to sit around and work to figure out something good to say. And I tell our guys at the ranch, I'm like, you want to stand around and people say, oh, he loved his mother. I'm like, who doesn't? Who don't love their mama? You know what I'm saying? Oh, he was a good daddy. He loved his kids. Good. What else? You ever go to a funeral and people can't say definitively that someone lived their life for Christ? It's sad and it's scary. I don't want people to have to work to figure out something to say about how I live my life for Jesus. You see this in the paper all the time. A long time attender of such and such. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that. You can put that in there. But what did they do for the kingdom? He calls us to walk with him on the adventure of true life, with him leading the way. God was calling Abraham. He was saying, go with me on an adventure. This is a sign of living a sacrificial life for Christ and thus experiencing abundant life. This is a sign of living a sacrificial life for Christ when you go on an adventure. Ephesians 3, you can turn over there. I've got it. I'll spoon feed you this. I tried to make the font bigger so people in the back could see it tonight. It says this, now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever, amen. And I put down, God calls us to use the power he has graciously given us. If God is truly unlimited, why not dream? Why not try? It says this, look at that. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than people, than us, he can do far more than us, even more than we could ask or even dream up. You know what? I can dream some crazy stuff. You've heard me. I think crazy stuff. And I say, Lord, if you can dream bigger than that, then that's saying something. He's saying beyond what you can even imagine. And it's saying to him be glory in the church. So God needs to be glorified. We need to step out in faith. And we need to. And I told you about my ugly prayer at Marable Hill Chapel and how it wasn't probably correct. But the Lord knew my heart. And I dared the Lord to fill up the gym. I said, fill this gym up with kids that are hurting, despised, neglected, downtrodden, the addicted, the afflicted, and the rebellious. And I prayed it 1,000 times if I prayed it once. And I'm not joking about 1,000, maybe thousands. I didn't know. So, Lord, I dare you to fill this place up with hurting kids, past what I can handle. I said, I want to see kids come to know Jesus Christ. And I will take the problems, but you just bring the kids. You've got to prompt their hearts. And so then I went to the schools, and God gave me an idea. He gave me a dream. He said to me, and I'm repeating this for those that weren't here, he said, do you see these kids? Because kids wouldn't come to youth group. They would not come to youth group, and I really couldn't get in with them. They weren't listening to me. He said, do you see these kids on the outskirts looking at a campus? Do you see these kids over here? And he was showing me the kids that weren't the cool kids. He said, they'll come. Will you go to them? I heard it just as plain. It was in my spirit. I heard it. And I said, yeah, I'll go to them. And I took off walking because I wanted to see God move. But see, when we pray and pray, God move, God move, God move. And he's saying, you move. You put a foot to your faith. You go to them. I have called you to go to them. And then I'll move. So you have to listen to what God's telling you to do, and then you have to walk and do it. If God tells you to witness to somebody, you witness. If he tells you to go somewhere, you go. If he's giving you a voice to sing, you sing for him. If you've had a desire inside of you to write a book, you write a book. If you want to write poetry, you write poetry. But if your heart burns to do something for the Lord, pray about it. The guys that made all these Christian movies, a church out of Georgia, and I haven't heard this story in a while, but the pastor saying, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And this guy was sitting there, and one of the staff, and he goes, oh God, I want to make movies. That's not something you hear in a staff meeting with your folks. And one of your staff members, your associate pastor, yells out, oh, God, I want to make movies. And he said, well, let's pray about that. And then comes Facing the Giants. And what's all the other ones they did? Fireproof and Courageous. And all these movies come out of that. From a church in Georgia. And the pastor said, well, let's just dream. What do you have inside of your heart to do? What are you burning to do? And somebody said, I want to make movies. There's nothing. If God puts that in your heart, then do it. I want to make a CD. I want to sing to the masses. I have a dream. I'd love to go to Israel and preach one day and preach to the Jewish people. I want to. It's God's chosen people. And they're hard-headed, but so am I. I'm like, God, send me. I'll go over there. I want to do that one day. What is God putting in your heart to do? If you don't have anything deep inside your heart to do, that somebody that you want to witness to or something you want to do for the Lord, I'm going to tell you, listen, if you're a farmer, you can reach farmers around here. If you're a cattleman, you can reach cattlemen around here. If you sow, you can meet people that sow, okay? I'm telling you, whatever you do, if you're a welder, if you're a construction worker, if you're a teacher, I'm telling you, God has got you strategically placed in order to reach people. And if everybody around you knows Jesus, then you need to go out and hunt some people down that don't. Because there's a lot of people around here that don't know the Lord. And don't let them, when you get around them out here and they say, oh, me and the man upstairs are good. Anytime they say me and the man upstairs are good, they're not. Every time, they're not. Oh, I go to church at such and such. Oh, really? You know, who's preacher over there? Well, I don't know who's over there right now. I'm not saying that going to church makes you a Christian, but I'm telling you that we look, is there evidence of fruit? Only God knows the heart. But if somebody is calling the Lord the man upstairs and they haven't been to church in a long time and there's no evidence in their lives, you can't just walk away from them. Because everybody down here says they know Jesus. And it's up to us to reach them. If you seek him with all your heart, God will give you dreams to reach people. And it won't be easy or safe, but it will be fulfilling. It won't be easy or safe. I told you about going to the DR. I'm telling you, it was not safe. I've told you about all the uglies over there. Well, I've told you a part of the uglies last night. But I'm sitting there, my wife's in the hospital, my oldest daughter's in the hospital with some serious stuff. And then I'm in the hospital for the first time in my life. And I told you, this is not funny. It's not cool to be a missionary anymore. It was hard. It was difficult. But you know what? People received Christ from us going over there. And when we left and we told the Dominicans we were going, my wife, bless her heart, could not bring herself to go down there. We called them all in chapel. And I could not talk because the Dominicans were crying. Because I had treated them, they said, like no American had ever treated them. I treated them as equals. I did not look down at them. Because they saw that my faith was authentic and they saw my struggle. And they knew that the organization that was over me was telling me to fire them one by one, and they knew that I wouldn't do it. They knew those things, and they knew that I went to their homes and I sat with them. And when their great-grandmother died, I went in there. Somebody dies over there, you bury them about the same day, the next day. You know what I'm saying? And you go in there in the home, and there's a little home, and there's a casket. And they're very emotional. And then a white American walks in to this home, and it's filled with flowers. And everybody stops talking and looks at you. It's what we're called to do. There's a man named William Carey who lived from 1761 to 1829. He's considered the father of modern Protestant missions, and he's famous for this: expect great things from God, attempt great things for God. And I have this book that I read out of a lot, and I've read it at a lot of churches, 131 Christians Everybody Should Know. I love this book mainly because I've never met another person that's got it, and I think that's really cool that I've got somebody else has got. So William Carey, I want to read you about this. Just read you a little thing. It says, at a meeting of Baptist leaders in the late 1700s, a newly ordained minister stood to argue for value of overseas missions. He was abruptly interrupted by an older minister who said, "Young man, sit down. You are enthusiastic. When God pleases to convert the heathen, he'll do it without consulting you or me." But William Carey believed that God wanted Christians to go and reach the heathen. So, he organized a missionary society, and then he raised money and he went over to India. Now, here's what happened. We know he's the father of but here's the other side of that. Illness racked the family, and loneliness and regret set in. He wrote this: "I'm in a strange land, no Christian friend, a large family, and nothing to supply their wants." But he also said, "Well, I have God, and his word is sure." He couldn't make any money. He couldn't make a living over there. They were in poverty. So, William Carey himself contracted malaria. And then his 5-year-old Peter, his son Peter, his firstborn, died from dysentery. From dysentery. His little boy died from dysentery. He writes this, "This is indeed the valley of the shadow of death to me. But I rejoice that I am here notwithstanding, and God is here." He goes on, and it says, in December 1800, after 7 years of missionary labor, Carey baptized his first convert. 7 years, and he baptized the first convert. Then he started translating their language into the New Testament. Carey continued to expect great things over the next 28 years. He and his pundits translated the entire Bible into India's major languages, and it names the languages that I can't even try to say. One of them's Hindu, and it says these 5 languages and parts of 209 other languages and dialects. The man taught himself these other dialects. He taught himself Greek and Hebrew himself. I don't know how you do that. I couldn't learn it from a professor. He also sought social reforms in India, including the abolition of infanticide, widow burning, that's what it says, and assisted suicide. He started a theological liberal arts education for some 2,500 students over there. By the time Carey died, he had spent 41 years in India without a furlough. What? His mission could count only some 700 converts in a nation of millions. 28 years, 700 converts. But he had laid an impressive foundation of Bible translations, education, and social reform. Here's the one thing. This is going to go into tomorrow night. Let me read this for you. His greatest legacy was in the worldwide missionary movement of the 19th century. It was in the people that he inspired. Missionaries like Judson, a guy by the name of Hudson Taylor, David Livingston, among thousands of others, were impressed not only by Carey's example, but by his words, expect great things, attempt great things. The history of the 19th century Protestant missions is in many ways an extended commentary on this phase. The man lost a son to dysentery over there. But now that he's in heaven, I don't believe that he's concerned about that. What happens to us here on earth in the way that we live our lives, if we live them sold out for Christ, it'll be reward. There's nothing less about William Carey than there is King David, the Apostle Paul. We just don't know him as well. So finally, we'll close with this. Jesus gave us the greatest vision mankind has ever received, and that's it. Jesus invited us to dream and to step out in faith. And he says go in and make disciples, but he doesn't say exactly how to do it. He leaves that up to us. We can go and we can start off schools. We need a Christian school around here. Somebody may have that in their heart to do it. It would be very difficult, but it can be done. I know some teachers would be willing to teach there. I'm just telling you, there's nothing off limits. Young people, listen to me. Teenagers, listen to me. There's nothing off limits for you. You need to dream big dreams, kids. You need to attempt great things for God. You need to say, God, what would you have me do to build your kingdom? This last photo up here, I'll show you. These are guys, this happened just last weekend. Before I came up here Saturday, we had a graduation. And there are 7 graduates there. 7 men that were addicted to drugs or alcohol, and they're all up there, and they gave their testimonies after a year-long program. And these men standing up there that looked so good, didn't look so good when they came in. The guy right there in the red, he owns a construction company. By the time he was 28 years old, he was a millionaire. The next guy there, Roman, beside him in the black jacket, that kid was on 7 different prescription drugs for depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and all kinds of stuff. When you came to Renewal Ranch, you said you're off of all of them. He didn't think he was going to do it. But we don't give out drugs like that there, unless you have, blood pressure medicine or something like that. But we just can't keep them there on the campus. So our philosophy is, we're not saying we don't believe in antidepressants. I'm not saying that. We're just saying you can't do them here because we want to get down to who the person is really at their base level. Okay? We're not saying they're bad. We're saying we can't do it here. So Roman came in on 7. The next guy over there, Damon in the blue tie, he's been working on our campus as a bunkhouse leader for the past 6 months. After he graduated 6 months, we let him stay on campus because he was so good and the Lord had his heart so much. He was a guy at Hope. We went down there and shared at a church in Hope, and he was so impressed, and God pricked his heart that he came forward and he said, please let me in the ranch. And it so happened we had an opening, and Damon came in and got saved, and he's free, and he's serving in ministry. The next guy over there is named Aaron. He's got a wife and a little baby. 14 months old, a little baby. And he had to leave his wife and his little baby and come in there because he knew until he got right, he couldn't lead them. The next guy over, Chad. Chad came in, his brother came through the program and he's set free. Now he came through and he's got set free. He loves to fish. He is a fisherman extraordinary. He fishes with a big net like they do down in Florida. It's the weirdest thing. We always make fun of him, but he catches fish that way. The next one over is Eric Jackson. And Eric Jackson right there, listen to me, he was now called, that guy right there, he went out and we asked him, do you need a detox? If you need a detox off of alcohol sometimes and any kind of opiate, you got to go to detox. We don't detox you there. You got to go detox, then you come to us. Well, he said, he's only 30 years old. He said, I drink, but I can stop anytime, and all this stuff, So we foolishly let him in. He coded. He walked outside and he fell dead because he drank so much alcohol that he had a heart attack. And he coded. And we gave him mouth to mouth and called the ambulance, and they went and fixed him up, and the next morning he was back and he graduated. He graduated. The next guy over there is a bunkhouse leader. His name's David Armstrong. He lived in El Dorado as a welder for 20 years. Alcoholic for 35 years. And now he's over phase 2. The next guy over right there, standing beside me, is the man that made the videos that I sent down here. He made the videos for me. Justin. He's a wonderful young man. He lived in a box in Hot Springs, addicted to all kinds of drugs. And now he's making videos for me to send down here to y'all. Great, wonderful young man, talented. Never give up on somebody. Never give up on yourself. You can do great things for the kingdom, and always give people 2nd and 3rd and 50th chances, because that's what the Lord gives us. What you don't see is behind these men are 7 men that didn't make it. I don't have their pictures, and they break my heart, and they go back to using. But listen, there's a lot of heartache in what I do. There's a lot of heartache when you step out in faith too. You're going to have some failures. But how much better to get out there and take a swing. Right. When I played Junction, it was Parker's Chapel, there was a boy named down there at Junction named Greg Glover. He threw a baseball at 92 miles an hour. I was scared to death of him. Everybody was. He was so good, he got drafted by the Cardinals. Greg's 6'5", 6'5" in high school, throwing 92 miles an hour. That's intimidating. We were scared to death of him. Joe Paul Hammett was down there. It was our coach then. He said, we're going to learn to hit Greg Glover. I said, how? He said he got in there. He put that pitching machine up on 100 miles an hour. If you've never stood in front of a pitching machine that throws 100 miles an hour, you will wet your britches. You will fall out of there. He put us inside of a cage with a pitching machine. He'd show you the ball, and by the time he went, boom, and it would be there. He'd be there, and you scared it. And sometimes those pitching machines will throw them inside. Whew. And he made us do it again and again. So I was always first or second batter my whole life. So I get in there, and we had practiced getting ready for Junction City, because Junction City is good. They've always been good. And I grew up with all those guys, went to school with them. So I get in there, and Greg Glover's throwing. So I get up there, and I'm looking around, and he throws one inside. He did it on purpose. I know he did. He backed me off a little bit, and I just stood my ground. And the next one came right down the middle, and I said, pow! Deep left field, over the left fielder's head. I didn't even swing that hard. When somebody's throwing that hard, all you got to do is put your bat out there, and it will fly. I didn't. I just did like this. I learned to do this on a 100-mile. I just did like this. Boop, just like that. That's all you got to do. Boop. And then, just like it, pow! It took off running, and I made a triple on Greg Glover to start the game. We lost that game. But we made Junction sweat. It was 9-8. And Parks Chapel wasn't good back then, but we had a good coach named Joe Paul Hammett that was real good. And we knocked Greg Glover so much that they had to replace him with Mark Price. That's the truth. We'd have probably won if I wasn't pitching for Parker's Chapel, because they just tore me up. They did. Before I got in that pitching machine, I was scared to death of Greg Glover. And I missed a lot of balls. And I was scared to face him, and our coach knew it. Don't be scared to face what God's got for you. You might get in there and strike out, but you may hit one to left field. Father, thank you for this time. Thank you, Father God, that you love us so much. Thank you that you have plans for Three Creeks Baptist Church. Thank you, Father God, that you love us so deeply that you would send your son to die on a cross for us. I pray, Father God, that you would fill Three Creeks Baptist Church with dreams and with visions and with ideas, Lord God, that they may step out in faith and attempt great things for you. So, Father God, I pray that visions and dreams would fill this congregation and that they would step out in faith. If anyone is here tonight and you say, Scott, I need to step out in faith for the Lord, and I really desperately want to live for him, I'm going to give you opportunity tonight to come forward. If you want to come forward and just take a knee and pray, or you'd like to talk to me, then you have this time to do so. You want to talk to me afterwards, you can give me a call. Father, we love you. We want to honor you in Jesus' name. Amen.